the book is written in such a way, that you can actually take the pieces as you would like to digest. I mean, yeah, you can read it from front to back. As I was preparing this book, actually just kind of skip around and just grab little pieces, even from my regular day, just as good reminders. So just know, if you haven't read the book, that's okay. But you may want to get it after this, whether that's on Audible, because I love hearing Jay's voice, because he's actually the person that did his own Audible book. He's the narrator for his own Audible book. You can get it on Audible or wherever you purchase books from. So I do recommend, even after this live book club version, 5-minute career hack style, that you still purchase the book. So with that being said, we're going to cover chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8 tonight. The titles of those chapters are, chapter 5 is called Purpose. Chapter 5 is called Purpose. I was having this conversation earlier with one of the co-founders. Like, one of the most elusive things, in my opinion, is trying to figure out your purpose in life. It's trying to figure out your purpose in life. And if you've ever experienced that, my LinkedIn audio crew, drop an emoji in there. Let me know if you've ever experienced the thought process or the journey of going through and trying to figure out what your purpose is in life. Or has it been a challenge? Has it been easy? If you're on IG Live, let me know what that experience has been like. Or you can just tap the heart button, the like button, and let me know what that experience is like. Welcome, 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 welcome to all those coming in on IG Live. Let me know what that experience has been like. William, thanks for joining us on LinkedIn Audio. We appreciate that. Finding out your purpose is huge, and that's what chapter 4 is about. Chapter 5, excuse me. Chapter 6 is all about routines. Chapter 7 is about the mind. Chapter 7 is about the mind. And one of my newfound favorite topics, chapter 8, is all about ego. All about ego. Somebody type ego in the chat. On Facebook, drop ego in the chat. Drop ego in the chat. My LinkedIn audio crew, give me a heart emoji for ego. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about now. I see that Mind Blown from Speak Up Sis podcast. Thank you for joining us. And thank you also for having us. I'm eternally grateful for you having us on your podcast as well. Thank you. Yep. Thank you, Regina. She dropped. Stuck out to me from the book. So I'll share a little snippet. It won't be directly quoted. It'll probably be paraphrased. And I'll share a few of my thoughts based upon some of the things that were shared in the book. I'm not going to share a ton of them. And I'm going to definitely be looking for those comments to understand how you're feeling about what I'm sharing. So starting with the first chapter that we're going to cover tonight, which is chapter 5. Chapter 5. This book club is presented by the 5-Minute Career Hack, right? So if you're not already following that page on Facebook or on LinkedIn, be sure to follow us. We're always putting out new, fresh content there. So chapter 5 being about purpose. One of the things that stuck out to me was this particular quote. You can't be everything that you want, but you can't be everything that you are. You can't be everything that you want, but you can't be everything that you are, right? So there's not this infinite amount of things that God purposed for you in your life. He thought of you very specifically, and these are my thoughts. He thought of you very specifically when he created you. He thought of you very specifically for a divine purpose on this earth. So you're not going to be able to do everything. And so when we think about some of the things Jay talked about in the first 4 chapters, is that awareness that we have of the people around us and how it can harm us and how it can hinder us and how it can hold us back. And what I mean by that is, if you didn't catch that first section that we covered, that first part we did last Thursday, is that you tend to think about the things that people are thinking or potentially thinking about you. And that's part of what why that quote stood out to me, is because I can't be everything that I might want to be. And sometimes those wants are driven by what we see around us and not necessarily what God placed in us. So that's why that quote stuck out to me. Definitely feel free on Twitter Spaces to use your emojis down at the bottom, as well as just wave if you can. Let me know everything's good. Same thing on LinkedIn audio. Speak Up Sis podcast on IG said, you can't be everything you are. Gotta sit with that one, right? Never thought about purpose like that. That's a great point. That's a great point. And definitely take a couple bars away from here, and you don't have to agree or disagree with them, but the reflection of it all should have you go deeper inside to better understand who you are and who God made you to be. The second thing in chapter 5, under purpose, this chapter's titled Purpose. Play hardest at the things you're strong at, and you will achieve a lot. I know I was truly conditioned as a part of my education, to get better at the things that I wasn't good at versus focusing on the things that I was really good at. And it was very, very refreshing. I had the opportunity to visit a school yesterday for my nephew along with my sister. And one of the things that they really focus on in this school is they said we do this kind of assessment, self-assessment, and then we allow the kids to really focus on their strengths more time than they actually spend on their weaknesses, and allow other people, their peers that happen to self-identify as that a strength, to help them along the way. So it minimizes this, oh, I don't know how to do this well. And I thought it was ingenious, but not something that happened during my education. Weren't thinking like that probably in the 80s, and whoever might be in the 70s, or probably not even in the 90s, right? Regina, on Facebook, is that something that resonates for you? Is that something that resonates for you? Right? Clarence, thanks for joining. Thanks for joining on LinkedIn audio. Is that something that resonates with you? Because it resonated with me when I heard that quote, and then ultimately having that experience just yesterday when they were talking about how they're working with the kids to allow them to self-assess their strengths and weaknesses, and then focus on their strengths, and have their peers as a part of community support them in the areas where they're not as strong, and then vice versa. They're able to help others in the areas that they might be weaker in. The next point in this chapter is passion is for you. Passion is for you. Purpose is for others. And this one really had to sit with me, right? I'll repeat it again for you. And tell me, just drop an emoji on LinkedIn audio. Tell me if that one resonates with you. Tell me if that one resonates with you. Passion is for you. Passion is for you. Purpose is for others. I've probably spent the last 3 or 4 years really thinking about, what my purpose is, what God has tasked me with to do here on earth. And I feel like I have that for the most part nailed down. I really do. But what caused me in this moment, in the last year of reading this book, to really pause on that passion is for you, purpose is for others, is I consistently think about why God put us on earth together, right? I consistently think about why God put us on earth together. I think about it a lot. I think about it for relationships with a significant other. I think about it with friends, siblings, you name it. I'm constantly thinking about, why did he put us down here together versus putting us down here alone, like just one person, and stopping and saying, that's it, I'm done. I made a human being, he was perfect, and that's a wrap, right? But he put us down here together for a reason. And then it brought me back to this quote: passion is for you, purpose is for others. Passion is for you, purpose is for others. So when I think about that quote and that last part more specifically, and it hit me today, I had this newfound revelation for give, and it shall be given unto you. And I'm getting the goosebumps just thinking about it, because I had a newfound revelation with that scripture, because God consistently asked us to give, right? He consistently asks us to give. And you sometimes hear it if you've ever been married, as a part of counseling, and making sure that you're understanding that by giving and by showing and supporting and being a great helpmate and so on and so forth, you're going to get back in return more than what you gave. And I think about the law of reciprocity that John Maxwell talked about in the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And he talks about how important that law is in leadership. Then I think about the John Maxwell Leadership Bible, where he adapted the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership to the Bible, which is an incredible Bible. If you don't have it, it's incredible. At the very beginning, I could have just put the Bible down, because he talked about how God called every leader in the Bible. He called every person, in the Bible to lead, right? He called every person in the Bible to lead. And a lot of that involves giving. A lot of that involves giving of yourself, giving of your purpose, because it is for others, right? That purpose is for others. So giving of yourself, right? Fulfilling that purpose for God, right? And that's my personal belief. And if you don't believe that, I beg of you to think through that for yourself and ultimately find what it is that you do believe in. But giving of yourself, give and it shall be given unto you. That's that community that God created while he put us on earth together. And when you hear people talk about you have everything that you need within you and around you, that's part of that. That's part of the community. That's part of, if my neighbor, right, is able to help me out, or my helpmate is able to do certain things for me to compliment me. Or just like I told you about the school experience I had yesterday, the kids helping each other with their weaknesses and vice versa. The other one might be strong in an area. So already training these kids in the law of reciprocity. I can help you here. You can help me here. Community. So going back to the quote and why it sticks out to me so much, because your passion is for you. He's going to give you passions. There's going to be things you enjoy in life, but purpose is for others. That's that part where we all have to be giving something. We've got to be giving out of the abundance that God blessed us with, that God created us with. We've got to be giving out of that abundance. You were born with something that is unique to just you. A gift that is unique to just you, that you may or may not be holding back. I don't know you necessarily. If you're watching or listening on LinkedIn, or if you're listening on Twitter Spaces, I don't know for sure, but you have something that God gave you an abundance of. And part of your purpose is going to be sharing that with others. Sharing that gift with others. Give and it shall be given. Give and it shall be given. Right? Does that resonate with anybody? I like a lot of emojis. And I'm learning, the kids are teaching me some of these new emojis too. Like they got the new heart one. I finally used that one the other day. So if you want to type that one in the chat, because that's brand new. And we thank you for those that are joining us on LinkedIn Audio. If this is your first time, because it's very new to LinkedIn, don't worry. You will figure out the controls. Okay, Clarence on LinkedIn Audio gave me a thumbs up. I appreciate that. And on Twitter Spaces, we've got Gerald, we've got Alicia, we've got the 5-Minute Career Hack team. I see the amazing and wonderful friend of mine, Angela, on as well. The person responsible for the Jamila hairstyle. I appreciate you as always. Thank you for joining. I hope this resonates with you as well. So moving on to the 6th chapter, which is routine. And I've only got a couple points in here. While I consistently focus on discipline, if you follow me on any type of social media, my word for the year and probably for the next decade might be discipline. We'll see what happens. No one knows what's in the future, but right now that word really resonates with me. And I would have considered myself a very disciplined person before this year started, but I realized some very important areas and some very important things that I needed to accomplish and get done. I wasn't as disciplined as I needed to be. So for this routine chapter, I'm going to give you the couple that, and it's just a few words. It's not a ton of content, but it's just a few words that stuck out to me. Location has energy. Location has energy. That was one of the blurbs in chapter 6. Location has energy, right? And I'll share a personal story. So the house that I'm in right now, I bought with my ex-husband. And when I first moved in, I kind of felt like things weren't going to continue to progress into us continuing to live and be married. And so I didn't decorate. I didn't put anything on the walls. You know, all I did was paint the house in an effort to basically be able to sell it if Walmart moved me again, right? And then things started to, take a dive, and we were moving towards getting a divorce. And the energy in my home was not settled. The energy in my home was not settled. It wasn't peaceful. It wasn't calm. It wasn't what I was accustomed to as an individual, in part because of the tension and the turmoil that ultimately existed in our relationship. It basically jumped on the house, if that makes sense. The energy in the house was not what it needed to be. And it took a while after I was divorced, and then probably maybe a year to 18 months, maybe almost 2 years after that point, for this to feel like my sanctuary. For me to be in this home during COVID lockdown, and it was like no big deal to me. I could have stayed here another year in lockdown. Not that I would have wanted to, but I could have, because it became my sanctuary based upon the energy that I started to radiate that was very different from that previous relationship that was in this home. So that really stuck out to me, because I fully understand that. Like, there's no confusion about that. I have a testimony about a location having energy. And my dad used to always say, you know, if you wash your car, you clean your car, you'll feel better driving your car. Location has energy. So it could be a big thing. It could be a small thing. You know, they say if your bedroom is a tranquil place, it's clean, it's organized, there's not much there. You know, some say don't even have a TV in there. Your rest will be 10 times better. Your rest will be 10 times better, because location has energy. So those are just a few examples. The second one in this chapter was time has memory. So somebody type time in the chat, because lately I'm in my 40s, right? I'm going on 45, excited about it, but time seems to be flying right now. I don't know if that's a Gen Y. I'm Gen Y, right? I get so confused with that. Somebody help me in the chat. If you were born in 78, that's Generation Y, right? Or is that X? No, that's generation. I'm Generation X, I think. And Y would be millennials. I think I got that right. So I'm Generation X, right? I get confused every time, right? But that time seems to just be, it just seems to be clipping by so freaking fast. So fast. It seems to be going by so fast. Like, I think I remember the beginning of the year. I remember, you know, man, it's 2022. And then the last couple weeks, I've been really thinking about when it was 1999. Anybody who was alive in 1999, drop a heart emoji if you were alive in 1999, right? If you were alive in 1999 and you can remember any thoughts about what was going on in 1999, right? And I was sharing this with my trade team earlier this week, that in 1999, we thought like all the computers were going to crash, that because the systems were set up with digits that started with 19, that when it transitioned to 2000, everything was going to crash because the systems couldn't understand it, all that jazz, right? That's what they thought was going to happen. And of course, that didn't happen. But then we had the dot-com crisis in the markets with all these dot-com companies, and then we had September 11th. Yep, Y2K, speak up, sis. Like, unless you were like a little bit older, like at least in your teens, you probably don't remember Y2K. The world was going to end. People were throwing parties like the world was going to end. Now, I've asked you and brought you back to that place, right? Now I want to ask you, as it relates to time, canned soup. Yeah, people were stocking up. It was a crazy time, right? It was like people thought the apocalypse was coming. So I want to now ask you this question. For those that remember that vividly, doesn't it seem like it was just yesterday? Doesn't it seem like that was just yesterday? That was 22 years ago. That was 22 years ago. And that's what I've been like, man, this thing is just clipping by so fast. And it speaks to that quote in Think Like a Monk. Time has memory. Time has memory. Right? Time has memory. Yep, speak up, sis. 22 years. It does not seem like it's been 22 years. Not even close. Not even close. And y'all are starting to recollect, right? And the only thing that something just came to my spirit and I want to share it with you. Are you doing everything right now that you wanted to do back 22 years ago, that you thought you wanted to do 22 years ago? You know, the good stuff, not that crazy stuff that, you know, you might have been into on the side, but that stuff that you really in your heart dreamed of wanting to do, like you were passionate about, because that passion is for you. Did you let any of those passions die that need to resurface in you? That need to resurface in you and that you need to go after right now? Are there some things that you're marking time on doing that you really don't want to do? Doing things that you really don't want to do right now? Are there some things that you want to do differently? Because you still have time. You are blessed. Right now, everyone listening is blessed to be able to be alive, hearing, seeing potentially on IG Live or Facebook Live, listening on Twitter Spaces, listening on LinkedIn Audio. You are alive. You have a passion that God gave you. That's just for you to go do. You still have time. You also have a purpose to give out of your abundance. Whatever he gave you to give out of your abundance, you still have time for that too. You still have time for that too. If there's a few things on your bucket list, there's some places I want to travel, and I'm getting that stuff lined up on my calendar so that I can go see it. There's some things that my father didn't get to do before he passed away that I'm going to make sure I go do. I go see. There were some places in the world. He was a historian, and he didn't get his degree in history, so he almost got 2 degrees from Louisiana Tech, but he didn't get his degree in history because, you know, he got my mom pregnant. Like, you know, hey, look, you gotta graduate early and take care of your responsibility, right? So he didn't finish his degree in history, but he continued to study history like you would have thought it was his first job. And so he would share these stories with us, i.e. I hated history as a result of that, but he would share all of this stuff with us, places he wanted to see, and you would have thought by the way he studied them that he had already seen them. The way he talked about them, that he had already seen them. So those are some places on the list that I've got to go see as well. Those are some places that I got to go see as well. And yes, the name of the book that we're covering tonight is Think Like a Monk. Thank you for putting that in the comments, Candice. Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. He is my mentor through the Genius community and has had a tremendous impact on my life since 2018, since I was first introduced to him. He's also on the Calm app for anybody that's on Calm or on the Calm app or looking to learn to meditate. He also has a daily J that I listen to at least 3-4 times a week. And he also has a podcast called On Purpose if you just want to hear a little bit from him. He does 2 podcasts a week. One is an interview style podcast and another is where he just kind of has a conversation about things that he wants to share from a wisdom and growth standpoint. So the name of the book is Think Like a Monk. Thank you for asking that so I can repeat it, by Jay Shetty. By Jay Shetty. So the last point in that chapter before we move on, when you start your day, right? This is just about starting your day. The title of this chapter is Routines. Routine, chapter 6. He says, when you start your day with high emotion, high stress, and speed, you program your body to work that way the entire day. When you start your day with high emotion, high stress, and speed, you program your day to work that way the entire day. Now, I know I got a few of my retail buddies that grew up in retail, whether that's on LinkedIn or Twitter Spaces, even on Facebook and IG, that we in retail, you are literally tethered to your phone like it's a 6-finger. So imagine if the phone was a 6-finger. You're attached to your email, whether it rings, text messages, other productivity apps. It feels like around the clock. And I own some of that, right? I own some of that because I allowed that. And I felt like I needed to do it because I was thinking about what other people might be thinking. But what that turned into is I have to have certain ringtones on my phone because of the way, if my phone rings a certain way, it brings on anxiety. It brings on anxiety because of the way I used to start my day when I worked in corporate America for some retail companies. So I would start the day like this. Not being grateful that I'm alive, that I'm breathing, anything like that. I'd be trying to check sales, make sure no store got burned up or robbed or nobody died, frankly. Like, that was stressful. Because when you're managing, at one point I think I was managing somewhere over 10,000 people. And it's so traumatic because someone was always dying. Someone was always dying, right? So you would start your day with that type of anxiety when you wake up. Like, okay, what happened? What's going on? What sale? Did we miss this? Then my boss emailed because they were on some ridiculous stuff like be up at 4 a.m. And so it became a trigger, right, of me getting up at this pace. And then I would operate that way the rest of the day. Now, what I will say is, it wasn't all bad, right? So I'm not going to paint a picture that it was completely horrible, because what it did teach me how to do, that pace taught me how to get things done in a really quick, fast-paced environment. It also taught me how to lead and manage thousands of people at one time. It taught me how to just compartmentalize and still get the job done. And so I used some of that, right? It sounds abusive, yes. It felt abusive with all the ringing, right? But then once I stepped away from it, it took me probably a good 18 months to calm down. Literally, it took me about 18 months to simply calm down and wake up slowly. Now, I pretty much spend about 30 minutes waking up, just waking up calmly, saying my affirmations, meditating, stretching, have my cup of coffee, whatever it is that day that I feel like doing. I take that time to set my intention for the day as well as my energy for the day. So that one stuck out to me. Does anybody else, by a show of reaction or an emoji or what have you, experience that ferociousness, whether it's getting the kids off to school and it's always a rush? I know I got several friends that go through that morning rush because the kids are moving slow. I know I got probably like 4 friends that go through that throughout the U.S. That's a big deal. And so then their day is like, man, whew, like you got to take a deep breath, right? You got to take a deep breath because the emotion was so high just to get to the door and drop them off or make sure you're to work or get to a store on time for all my retail friends out there. So that one stuck out as well. And the last thing is just 2 words, and it's going to be totally out of context. So don't mind me because I just want to give you the nuggets that resonated with me quickly. And then Valerie also said on IG, yes, people don't realize that meditation in the morning is a great start. It's a phenomenal way to start your day. And again, Jay Shetty was a huge part of that in the book that we're reading, Think Like a Monk. He learned at an extreme level by being a monk. But the things that he shared have really helped me to really settle into that, as well as the Calm app. Huge fan of the Calm app. And of course, I'm not being paid to endorse them in any way, shape, or form. But if they want to drop me a bag, just let them know I'm all right with that too, right? But I'm a big fan and have been mostly since 2018. So in chapter 7, now I have a ton of notes in chapter 7, and I'm not going to go through all of them. But the title of the chapter is called The Mind. The Mind. That's the title of the chapter. And the first thing that was jarring was the statistic around how many actual thoughts that you have in a day. Anybody want to guess? Type in the comments if you want to guess how many thoughts you have in a day, right? How many thoughts do you have in a day? And I know my folks on the Twitter Spaces and LinkedIn audio can't necessarily type, but I will let you know. So Alicia said 30,000. I use Headspace. Okay, 50K. We're getting closer. And so somebody said 30,000 thoughts in a day. Somebody said 50,000 thoughts in a day. It's actually 70,000 thoughts on average in a day is how much the human brain has. 70,000 thoughts. I was like, whoa, right? And I don't know if that represents some of the thoughts subconsciously while you're asleep or not, but it was 70,000 in a day, right? The other stat that he gave was that we're only present for 3 seconds at a time. So even as I'm doing this live with you all, part of me is thinking about the past and part of me is thinking about the future, with only 3 seconds in the middle being present with you all at a time. And part of it is the way God wired us to be so that we could be ready to do things and protect ourselves. So it's a protection mechanism that we're constantly computing future outcomes. We're constantly computing future outcomes. So we're thinking about our past situations, right? And then what may happen in the future based upon those and where we currently are. And it's part of our survival mechanism. So if you think about it, most of us probably in here drive. And at this point, you're probably driving and not having to think too much. But you're processing information that you see on the road, left, right, in your rearview mirror, right? Constantly looking, checking, even though you're not thinking about it, you're processing what you're seeing. And then you're using that stuff that happened in the past when you drove to anticipate what you should do next and what someone else may do next. It's a survival mechanism. So we're wired that way, right? Walking on a treadmill, you're waiting on the roller to come to you, right? You're waiting on it to come to you and you can get completely lost in thought. So if that's how we're wired as individuals, how can it then also hinder us in what we're doing if we're not currently present? Number one, I say it all the time, no one knows what is going to happen in the future. There's not a single person on this earth that knows what's going to happen tomorrow. No one. But yet our brains are wired to think about it. Our brains are wired to think about it, and we have to some degree. But then that causes us not to be as present, whether that's with our family, whether that's, at dinner, social gatherings, whatever that might be, because part of us is in the past and part of us is in the future. We're thinking about what's going to happen this weekend, but it's only Thursday. We're thinking about what am I going to do? What am I going to wear? What am I going to eat? Like all of this stuff, just thinking constantly, 70,000 thoughts. And yes, meditation helps to be in the moment, right? Because it slows some of that down. Not that you won't have thoughts. Able to be present. We're thinking about things like he mentioned in the book. Should I end this relationship? Do I have to go to X place right now? Can I go over here? Can I make this move? And so your brain is just, it's on overdrive for some. And then he says, the mind can be your best friend or your enemy, depending upon how you train it. Right? The mind can be your best enemy, depending upon how you train it. And someone said they like this t-shirt. It is actually a part of an entire brand and a book by one of my very good friends in Atlanta. Her name is Ashley Adana. You can follow her on social media. She has an event production business, but during COVID, she actually wrote a book of affirmations and quotes called Current Priority Me, as well as has t-shirts and some sweatshirts. Phenomenal brand. One of the sweatshirts is I Am a Masterpiece. Phenomenal brand. So be sure to follow her. I'll try to drop it in the comments afterwards. And she just celebrated a birthday a few days ago. So go bless her by following her page, liking and supporting if you want to support another Black-owned business and another female entrepreneur that's rocking. So, yep, definitely wanted to shout her out since someone mentioned the shirt that I'm wearing. It's one of my favorites. So your mind can be your best friend or your enemy depending upon how you train it. The mind can convince you to do something you don't want to do. This is a lot of times what happens to us in our teenage years. This is a lot of times what happens in our teenage years, right? We'll have a little bit of influence from the outside, peer pressure, and then we'll talk ourselves into doing some stuff that we know we shouldn't be doing, that we know we shouldn't be out here running these streets, riding through the east for those in New Orleans, doing stuff we ain't got no business doing. As my friend Angela says all the time, I should be dead based upon some of the stuff I was exposed to and or not had more of an incubator to grow up in, right? your mind can trick you into that. Your mind can trick you into doing things that you don't want to do. It can convince you. And then I'm going to skip forward because I want to make sure I wrap up timely. So talking about the mind and how you train it. If it's going to be your best friend, right? If your mind is going to be your best friend, what's the most important thing that you can do in a relationship? What does everybody say that the most important thing that you can do in a relationship? What do y'all think on Facebook? What's the most important thing that you think you can do in a relationship? Whether that's with parents, kids, spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. What's the most important thing that I don't think anyone would argue that you can do in a relationship? Tell them the truth. So tell, that's a key word. That's a key word. But communication, right? I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off. Communication is one of the most important things you can do with your friend. So if your mind is going to be your best friend, Jay says you should communicate with your mind. That's right, Angela, communicate. You should communicate with your mind. What might that look like? Right? Start talking to the thoughts rattling around in your head. Start talking to the thoughts rattling around in your head. You're having them, recognize them, address them. And then reframe the ones that are self-critical. So whether that's about how you look, whether you're smart, whether you're intelligent, whether I can do this or I can't do this. And it's really tough for me to frame these, so I made sure I wrote some of them down that he mentioned in the book, because I am so focused on making sure that I, number one, catch my thoughts and reframe them, but not allow them to come out of my mouth so that they go back into my subconscious, right? That's a whole other podcast, as we say at the 5-Minute Career Hack. That's a whole other podcast. But if you haven't watched your hard drive, right? If you haven't watched your hard drive, let me make sure that. Hope that helped a little bit. But if you haven't watched your hard drive on the 5-Minute Career Hack podcast, be sure to check that out. But you got to catch those thoughts. Then you have to talk to those thoughts. So some of the examples he used were, kind of small, but you'll get the point. He said, I'm bored. What if that's a thought you have in your head? I'm bored. I'm moving slow while doing this. I can't do this. I'm not pretty enough. I'm too big. I'm too small. Whatever those things and those thoughts that are running around in your head, you got to stop them. So if it's I'm bored or I'm not getting whatever it is done, maybe you should say, I am working on it and I'm improving while I work towards finishing it. So you catch the thought and then you reframe it. So you catch the thought that your best friend is having, which is now your mind, and then you reframe that thought. Right? And I could dig into a few more of those, but in essence, they're affirmations. But part of affirmations is you have to catch what is already going on in your head and frame your affirmation around what's happening in your head. It's great to start by using others that other people share, but you got to catch the thoughts that are rattling around in your head. Right? I had a little bit of fear creep up in me. I think it was end of last year. And so I did a podcast episode on it. The title of it is called, I think it's Fear, I Don't Care, was the episode that I did. And it was just a random little isolated thought that creeped up into my head. And I said, oh, absolutely not. Nah, not today. You can't stay here. And I wrote that episode, recorded it, and shared it with the world as part of my affirmation. As part of my affirmation. So you have to catch those thoughts when they happen and then reframe them. That's how you work on training your mind. And then to move to the last chapter, again, we're covering some of the highlights as I saw them, Jamila, on Think Like a Monk, the book by Jay Shetty. Go ahead and add Jay Shetty. He's a mentor of mine, has a phenomenal podcast. He's on the Calm app. And of course, this book, I hope it blesses you, what I've shared, and even gets you to buy it or buy it for someone else that might need some of these nuggets. So chapter 8 is all about the ego. The first point that he called out on the ego was, the ego is a mask. The ego is a mask. right? So when you think about how you step out into the world versus how you look, I'm not even going to say inside the house. I'm going to say inside the bathroom, right? Before anyone else might even see you. What mask do you have to put on? Proverbial mask. What mask do you have to put on? That's part of the ego. We hide our true nature as a part of feeding and dealing with that ego, which is in essence a part of the mind. But what that ends up causing is the public persona has to work hard to maintain something that is not truly who we are. Our public persona has to work really hard. That mask has to work double time to be maintained in public, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting if you've done it. Just hit the like button. It's not to call anyone out necessarily, but sometimes just owning what you've done, how you've done it, wrong, right, or indifferent, can help set you free. Can help set you free. Ownership is key. He also says sometimes it takes a deflated ego. Sometimes it takes a deflated ego to see what the inflated ego is up to. Sometimes it takes a deflated ego to figure out what the inflated ego was up to, because when you're wrapped up in what the inflated ego's got going on, you can't even see it. And sometimes it's even hard for the people that love you to communicate it to you. Your ego is all or nothing. And what that means is that all or nothing, it's either you're great or you're bad. There's no in between for everything. You're either the right weight, or you're overweight or underweight, or you're just never where you need to be. You're either beautiful or you're ugly, right? Which is such a horrible word. But that's what can sometimes be rattling around in your head. And the ego has an all or nothing mindset. In the monastery where Jay was a monk, one of the practices, and this is where I'll end it, and two other thoughts. One of the practices that they had that we can adopt, which I thought was pretty cool because it's really easy to think about and remind yourself of. He said they had to have two things to remember and two things to forget, right? Two things to remember. Somebody type that. Two things to forget and two things to remember. Two things to remember and two things to forget. So the two things that they had to remember were the bad things that they had done to someone else. So remember the bad things that you've done to someone else. And by doing so, you're forced to remember your imperfections and regrets, which keep you grounded, help to keep the ego in check. Not to wallow in self-pity. Let me caution, because I know, we have some folks on here that might be an issue for you. So it's not around self-pity or just like over-regret, but just to help keep the ego grounded so that it doesn't get too big for those that it might be an inflated ego. And then you want to remember the good things others have done for you. This helps us to remain humble and grateful for our gifts and the things that we've been given, whether that's from someone else, from God. It basically incentivizes and creates a culture of consistent gratitude day to day. When you remember those two things, the things that you've done that were bad towards others, those imperfections, regrets, and then the things that others have done for you to help keep you in a spirit of gratitude at all times. Now, to the two things that you should forget. Forget the good that you've done for others. And I was like, man, come on, Jay. Right? Forget the good we have done for others. And he said, if we're impressed by our deeds, the egos grow. And then it made me think about vanity in the Bible. But again, I don't have too much time to go too far into that. So I'm going to leave that for you to go dig and discover and reach back to those scriptures around vanity in the Bible. But at that point, I was like, okay, I feel you. I feel you, Jay. I feel that point, Jay. I do. And then the other thing that he asked you to forget is the bad that others have done to you. So the two things to forget: the good we've done for others so that our ego doesn't grow, and then the bad that others have done to us. We have to let that go too. Now that, and before I could even say it, I see Count It All Joy put in there. Now that right there is different. That one's going to be the hard one out of all four things. So 2 things to remember, 2 things to forget. That last one is like, can I really do that? Can I really just forget it? Whew. Can I release that? Whew. That's a new emoji, huh? Count It All Joy. That's a new emoji. She just dropped a new emoji where the face, or the smiley yellow face, is melting into the ground. I'm gonna find a way to use that one too on IG. I'm into emojis. Exuberance is me said that takes work. It takes work. And the only thing that I have to offer there, because it's a struggle for me, I'm gonna just be honest. It's a struggle for me, is the amount of time, if we go back to time as memory, the amount of time that it takes to hold on, the amount of time that it takes away from you to hold on to what others have done to you, is costing you your life. It's costing you your life. Time has memory, and it's finite. Time is finite. You don't know if today or tomorrow you're gone. Is it worth hanging on to? Count It All Joy said, and room for new joy and mercies, right? Because it's taking up space. That hurt or whatever they did to you is taking up space. It's taking up space in your life. And so if you're waiting for a partner, shout out to my girl Johanna Barrett, who just launched her podcast, While I'm Waiting. It's a lot of what she's talking about over there. If you're not already following her, be sure to follow her. That's part of it. If you're waiting on your significant other, but you have a ton of stuff that you're holding on to, a ton of hurt that you're holding on to, that space is where God is going to place that person for you. So you have to let it go. You have to let it go. You have to let it go. It's taking up too much time. It's taking up too much energy. And it's taking up that finite amount of time on your hard drive, Candice, on your hard drive. It's taking up too much space, too much time, too much energy. And you don't even know how much you have left of that same time. So if there's something that you feel God has purposed you to do, something that you're waiting on, if you're in a waiting season and you're waiting for the first home, you're waiting, for a job, you're waiting on that significant other, you're waiting on your, how does Sierra say it, for the man that you prayed for, you done prayed your prayer and you still waiting, right? You're still waiting on your Russell Wilson, right? Raise your hand if you're still waiting on your Russell Wilson, right? Or her to send that prayer exactly as she said it. Well, maybe the wait is about clearing up that space. Clearing up that space so that there's room for God to pour out that blessing that he has for you. So that there's room for him to fill your cup so that it overflows. And now that purpose that he's tasked you with, that he's given you, it's easy to share with others, including that significant other, because they're going to need part of your purpose too. I believe that. I believe they're going to need part of your purpose too. Count It All Joy. Alicia said, make room for what you can't even imagine. That gave me goosebumps. Oh, right? Because nobody knows what the future holds, right? Y'all can see these goosebumps. Make room for what you can't even imagine, because that's what God has for you. He couldn't tell you the whole plan, because he knows he has a plan for you, a plan for good, not for bad, to give you a hope in the future, but he can't tell you everything. You might run in the closet and hide. I know I would have. If he would have told me, I'd be standing here sharing what I'm sharing with you all right now, wherever you might be across the world, I probably would have said, nah, I'm good. I'm good. And those that know me really, really well, like my girl Angela, Candyce, Alicia, those that know me really well know I am an extremely private person. I am an extremely private person. So if he had told me this 20 years ago that I'd be on here sharing about the Think Like a Monk book by Jess Shetty with the world and sharing some of my personal, intimate thoughts and things that have happened to me in my life and experiences, I would have said, nah, I'm good. What else you got? What's next on the list? What else can I do? So he can't share it all for you. So it has to be, as Alicia said in the comments on IG, it has to be that you're making room for the things that you personally can't even imagine. You can't even fathom in your wildest dreams. And part of making that room is letting go of past hurts and past hurts by individuals that have hurt you. Because that time is so finite, and it could be here today, gone tomorrow. I always say the older you get, the more people you're going to lose, and it gets really real. We talked about those that were around and thinking in 1999 and able to process what was happening in 1999 and how quickly time flies. Well, what I've learned these past couple of years is that some very important instrumental people in my life have passed away out of nowhere in some cases. And I don't know if today or tomorrow, like, that could be someone else. It could be me. I don't know. I'm not speaking that over anyone's life, but what would you do with that last 24 hours? I'm pretty sure you wouldn't be focused on that hurt. I'm pretty sure you'd be living your best life. That's all I have for you all tonight. I hope this blessed you. Give me some heart emojis. Give me some reactions. Give me some loves. Give me some hand claps, some waves. If anybody got that new one that everybody's using while it's still trending, drop that one in the comments too. Be sure once I post this live just to comment and share it with someone else if you think this will benefit them, if you think this will help them, if they're in a place in their life where maybe they needed to hear some of these things. Be sure to share with them, because I know that's part of our purpose. Thank you, Alicia. I see the new emoji. I get excited about the little things. That's how you know you've grown, is when you get excited about an emoji. You real grown. It's the little things sometimes. So I hope this bless you. And as I end all of my podcasts, I love you. If no one's told you today, I want to make sure you know that I love you. God loves you. And be blessed.